everybody. Nice to see this room full. Thanks for coming. All right. So, cultural build. This is a concept we've been working in the Common Stack for a while. And this is what we're going to talk about today. So, first, the definition of culture and love. Defining because it's important for us to have common ground for communication, for us to have a shared language for concepts that are very important for how we interact with each other. And what is a healthy culture? What is an unhealthy culture? How can we set up a healthy environment? And what is the connection of all of this with token economics? And then I'll lead to the conclusion. So, the etymology of the word culture means tend to the earth and grow. Culture is the collection of factors that set up an environment. So a healthy culture is one that enables a thriving and symbiotic ecosystem to emerge and grow. It's cultivation. And love, according to Scott Pack and endorsed by Bell Hooks, is, where's the quote? Love is the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own growth and another spiritual growth. So we see little indication that love informs decisions, strengthens our understanding of community, or it keeps us together. So what is a healthy culture? Maybe it's a combination of both. If we think that nurture culture is the combination of love and the definition of culture by the etymology of the word, we would have an environment that set up conditions for our development with love. So nurture culture is not one type of culture, but it's rather culture in its healthy state. And this is just like nature does in a state of balance. I don't know if So the soil is providing a state of growth for seeds to emerge when is in balance. So I would actually like to propose an exercise. And if you feel comfortable, please close your eyes for 3 seconds. And see how does this phrase resonates with you. Our mothers were the first system we inhabited. The womb had the perfect conditions for us to develop in a state of surrender, with no fear of growth. You can open your eyes now, and maybe just reflect on that as thinking of our mothers as the first systems we inhabit brings us this awareness of how nurturing is important for our development and how nurturing systems should have these conditions for us to develop as the base of as the base. So I'm sorry that it's really hard to see these lights here, so I'm feeling a little lost. All right, but moving forward, we understand what is an unhealthy culture. That is the burnout culture. So an unhealthy culture is one that fails on doing that. Fails on doing what the healthy culture provides us to, that is creating these healthy environments. So we've been growing on a soil that patriarchal capitalism prepared for us. It's stiff, quite dry, resources are scarce, and we are always reaching our limits. In burnout culture, we are we are far from achieving our needs from Maslow's hierarchy of needs that said that for self-actualization, we actually need physiological safety, love, belonging, esteem, and that would make us achieve self-actualization. That means being all you can be. But for having physiological needs met, how many of you have spent 5 hours in a call and forgot to eat and had little time to go to the bathroom? And how, yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, some of us. And how do we feel when we are stressed? How does our self-esteem feel? How can we move our bodies in the middle of all of this amazing things that are happening and that we want to participate? We want to make things happen. We want to work. We want to connect with people because it's so exciting, everything that it's going on. But what are some things we can do to have all that, but in a health space without feeling like we're constantly in the verge of a breakdown? So these are some aspects of a burnout culture that are one's value is on how much they produce. The production of goods only benefit a few. Psychological and physiological needs are often compromised. There is competition, even if it's hard to admit, especially in DAO spaces. There is always a subtle feeling of competition. And there is little or no room for spontaneity. So how can we deal with all this if we are trying to have a nurturing culture? So setting up a healthy environment and understanding the missing piece. How can we restore culture's health? And for that, I'll bring up Ostrom. She, like Tamara mentioned, she won the Nobel Prize in Economics for proving wrong the tragedy of the commons. And she gifted us with 8 principles for governing the commons, for building communities that can successfully manage public goods. So in the token engineering commons, we've been applying Ostrom's principles in our cultural build for the first time in a cyber commons, as far as I know. And this talks a lot with the empirical plus theory that Vitalik was mentioning in his talk. Like we have the background of Ostrom and her theory, and we've been trying to implement that in practice and seeing how that works and learning with its applications. So explaining a little bit about what are these 8 principles. Clearly defined boundaries. I think this one, it's quite obvious. We need to understand what are our limits. Congruence between appropriation and provision talks about how to have a sustainable system, so how to not spend more than it's being provided. Collective choice arrangements is making sure that the people that participate in these communities have decision-making power over what is being decided for them and being decided by them. Monitoring, she talks about mutual monitoring, that it's not having someone that it's outside of your space to check what you're doing, but to have the people who are part of this community to check on each other. And that creates an information loop. By doing that, you're learning, and information is a resource. And graduated sanctions that are forgiving rules for if something happens, you have a framework for addressing infractions. And conflict resolution mechanisms, that is having conflict resolution available at a low cost for everyone in the organization, and how important this is for the health of individuals. And minimal recognition of rights to organize is just making sure that no one will shut us down, that there is not a legal entity that has more power than the minimum rights that we have that could stop what we're doing. And Nestor Enterprises is being within ecosystems, and within an organization having also sub-organizations. So we've been having a great run on implementing all of these principles, and we've been learning so much with them, and they create many feedback loops, but there's still something that is missing. And I think it's really enhancing the importance of feedback loops. Why? That's where token economics comes in. Token engineering is the design, verification, and optimization of token economic systems. So these 3 steps are also valid for culture. And culture and economics are inseparable. I always say this, but economics is a social science. It talks about the interactions that individuals have. So if these principles, they are valid for token economics and also for people and for communities, how can we make sure that this feedback, that this loop is actually happening? The burnout culture skips most of the time the verification and optimization steps because of its output-oriented nature. And we need both. It's great to have outputs, but how can we balance that with a state of reflection? So this is very important to have a process where spontaneous action comes in and there is a moment for reflection. How many of you have moments of reflection instilled in your culture at work? Just the TEC crew. Yeah, it's not so easy to open this space because we're constantly overwhelmed by everything that's happening. But this is so important because this updates the action. Just the state of reflection provides an updated action and creates this feedback loop on culture that is essential for all of the other 8 principles to be working in a good way. Because even having all of these processes in place, burnout culture keeps creeping in. And I think what we need to do is to bring more negative spaces. So in sculpture, negative space is negative space in a composition can help identify the focal point. And this is what is missing. In the whole crypto space, we're all overwhelmed with the amount of images that we have everywhere, that we are missing on printing the shapes. What are the shapes of the things we are creating? How can we identify things in a way that they have their own form without mix and matching with everything that is around? So this image is from this sculptor called Deschermayer, and you can see how he has this phrase that is taking the fat off the space. So he sculpts by taking the fat off. And when he takes the fat off, he creates a picture that has a focal point. So the name of this sculpture, can anyone guess? Okay, it's very obvious, is the walking man. It's a man that is walking, and it's obvious because he created an emphasis of the emptiness within the legs that give a focal point for the action that is happening. And then this other man that is walking around him is interacting with this image point. And then someone else that is taking the picture is seeing how these things talk to each other. And these types of relationships we can only have if we have negative spaces, and they are so important for the crypto space, for us to be able to have a nurturing culture in a way that we can see each other, we can see what's missing, we can have these feedback loops, and this fortifies the economy because we can see where value is, we can bring the invisible to visible. And I've been thinking a lot about this word development. If you think about a film and you're gonna develop this film, you're revealing an image that already exists. So what you're bringing to existence is already there. And that's pretty much emergence. When we open empty spaces, things can emerge in these spaces. And the tools we have that are the development tools, being a developer, is basically bringing those images, those pieces of emergence, those values that were in the invisible to the visible with the tooling, with all of the softwares that we're building, with the processes. So I'll conclude to define a little bit nurture culture in a way that it has love ethics within, understanding that love is essential for decision making, that love is essential for our growth in a way that we can open spaces for each other to be who we want to be, to become self-actualizing. That is this concept of being all you can be. And then considering implementing Ostrom's principles with an emphasis on feedback loops. That is a major learning from token engineering. The ability to module systems and create images where you can see how things are connecting one with the other. Create open spaces for self-optimization. So I think by doing that, by having love ethics, by communicating with each other in a state of growth, by understanding culture as something that creates an environment for us to thrive, we can build open spaces that let us be who we are and create economic models that actually enable our development as human beings and not and don't keep us on the verge of breaking down. So I think we can intentionally create environments that contain what is needed for our growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Livia. We've got about 4 minutes for questions.